What's all that talk that everybody was doing about the Rockets not having no stars, no go-to players, no closers? Who's going to have the ball in their hands when it matters, when the game is on the line, when the season is on the line, when you're desperate, when you really need it? Who you going to get a ball to? The Rockets just do it by committee. Where are their stars? They have no stars. They're a cool story, but you only got so much of a ceiling if you don't have stars. Where they at? And man, did they show up as well as ever on Wednesday night in game 2. The stars revealed themselves. The Rocket stars revealed themselves in game 2 in a way that they were not being given credit for going into this series, and certainly in ways that they did not play up to in game 1, save for Alperen Sengun. Rockets tie this series against the Warriors, and man, do we have a series in front of us. Now, it depends on what kind of basketball you like and what your rooting interests are. If you listen to me, you're probably Houston leaning. If you listen to me, you probably like basketball. And if you like basketball, you like the Warriors. And if you're Houston leaning, you like the Rockets, right? So you, the audience, are probably more inclined to be interested in this series. But I know a lot of casuals are looking around saying, man, this is a barn burner, man. It's too physical. There are too many fouls. One of the teams doesn't make enough shots. The other team is just one star away from being really underwhelming to watch. And it's just not all that. There are better series, more quality series, probably more talented teams to watch across the playoff landscape than this one. But man, I could not be more thrilled. I could not be more thrilled to watch these two teams that are both physical in nature, but stylistically different, go head to head in the way that they are. Brandon Scott here on the B Block Podcast. Appreciate you for joining me. Make sure that you subscribe to the B Block Podcast wherever it is that you get your podcast. Catch us on YouTube, catch us on social media, all of that type of stuff. Also, shout out to Foolish Club Media and the partnership. Make sure you're following everything that they do there as well. You can also catch the B Block Podcast, on Foolish Club Media every Tuesday and Thursday. But I want to dive into the crux of this game and the big story of it. And we all know what that is because we all watched Jalen Green do the whole Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing, where he's hiding cold. He is one way at 1 minute and another way the next. And look, we all went through it on game 1. We talked about it. I had Big Sarge on the podcast earlier in the week talking about it. The game 1 performance just was not quite good enough. But game 2, 38 points, efficient from the field, picking his spots, making plays, was a playmaker from the start of the game. I can remember early in the game, it might have even been the first bucket, but I can remember early in the game where he finds Amen Thompson in the dunker spot. Then throughout the game, he's finding his like penetration and dish opportunities, penetration and kick opportunities that he was not finding in the first game. And it was really cool to see, man. Like this dude, I think, to his credit, admitted that the moment of his first playoff game in his career, and I think people are still forgetting how young these guys are, but Jalen Green's like 22, 23 years old or something like that. The weight of your first playoff game, and you're one of the main guys. You are one of two guys that the entire team and the entire city and the entire fan base is looking toward to carry you. And you've had some dark days in terms of just from a competitive side and what it looks like in the NBA. And to go from there to here in this moment, like that particular moment, game 1 did appear to be too big for him. And I think in so many words, he admitted that after game 2. But what was cool to see was him making the adjustment and really in two ways. He made, I would say, he made the basketball adjustment in terms of making the right reads and understanding the opportunities to pass the ball when they're packing the paint and when they're shading toward him, and basically game planning around both not allowing him to go crazy in the paint, but also having to make good decisions with the basketball. That was essentially the game plan, both games. First game, he didn't handle it as well. Made the adjustment in game two to where he is making the right pass. He is making the right read. He is, has a little bit more discernment of when to attack the rim and is finishing better. And then, of course, that opened things up, at least I believe, opened things up for his jump shot, which I think we can all acknowledge is frustratingly inconsistent on a game to game basis. But it was on, definitely on Wednesday night, and you got to give them a lot of credit. The Rockets, the big knock on them is, well, who are their stars? Who are the guys that are going to have the ball? Who are the guys that you can really rely on? And I think in game one, even in defeat, Alperen Sengun showed you that he could be that guy. And in game two, Jalen Green absolutely showed you that he could be that guy. The difference is Shingun's been relatively consistent. Green, not necessarily, especially against the Warriors, but he raises, he raises the ceiling. He raises the ceiling in a way that nobody else on that team, I think, does. And when he looks like that, the Rockets are in an entirely different conversation, I think, from what they're normally in when people are just talking about them as a scrappy team that plays defense that doesn't have any stars, right? It kind of reminds me of the Kansas City Chiefs a couple of years ago, right? The Kansas City Chiefs team that won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. And I remember that year the big talk was, well, who's gonna be there? They don't have a number one receiver. So obviously they lost this past year, but the year before that, right? Who's going to be their number one receiver? They don't have a number one receiver. Who's Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball to? And of course, Travis Kelce is their number one receiver. But throughout the season, Rashee Rice emerged, rookie, but he did emerge as their number one receiver. Now he hasn't necessarily, materialized as that since then, of course. But in the moment, I think at the time it was like, okay, well, Rashee Rice may not be a number one receiver, but he's definitely playing like one now. Okay. I don't know if Jalen Green has done enough yet for people to accept him as a star. I think the kid's a star. He's clearly a star. I don't know how you watch him on Wednesday night in game two and not see a star. Like, the consistency is the issue, and that is a key part of being a star, is being able to be somebody that your team can rely on a night to night basis. But on that night, and if he's able to put that together, string that together over a 5, 6, 7 game span, if we're just talking about this series in particular, that changes the conversation. That's a different team. There is the star that you seek. There is the star that you feel like the Rockets lack. So credit to Jalen Green for making the adjustment. He was good as a scorer. He was good as a playmaker. And another thing that was talked about a lot after the game, and I was glad to see this because it deserves its own highlight and its own credit, is the defense that Jalen Green was playing in this game. I don't think you realize, like, he is not given enough credit for how much more effort he gives on that end of the floor from when he started. Like, I think the biggest growth that he's made is actually his decision making, believe it or not, is his ability to read. But next to that, I think, is the way he turns it up defensively. And I don't think it was necessarily like a huge problem, but I think, just them being young and them losing, and it was just hard to bring it all the time. I think Jalen Green gives a lot more effort defensively now than and I guess you have to if you're playing for Ime Udoka. But in this game in particular, okay, and this is important, where the way it's playing out is early foul trouble for some of your key guys. Okay, so early in the game, you've got a Ben Thompson. Ben Thompson had 3 fouls in the first quarter. You've got Dylan Brooks with 3 fouls. You've got Alperen Sengun with 3 fouls. I think both of those guys, or at least Brooks and Thompson, I want to say finished with 4 fouls. But they are operating with like three of their key players, three of their starters in foul trouble for the bulk of the game. And these are guys, at least two of them, who are your best defensive players, right? Two of your best defensive players, one of them of which you want to put on Steph Curry, right? Amin Thompson, probably prematurely getting the Curry stopper sort of um, tag on him after what happened at the end of the regular season, and then game one happens, and everybody's like, "Hey, what happened to that?" Well, he's still an All NBA type of defender, and I would say a Defensive Player of the Year type of candidate, and their best option to go up against Steph Curry. But when he's in foul trouble, okay, what do you do? Maybe a little Dylan Brooks. Okay, when he and Dylan Brooks are in foul trouble, what do you do? Okay, and so Jalen Green, I thought between Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet, they did a wonderful job of guarding Steph, who still went for 20, but did not have anything close to a Steph-like game. Did not, I don't think, had a Steph type of impact on this game. And once Jimmy Butler goes out, and we'll talk about that in a second, but once Jimmy Butler goes out, this team is really underwhelming when it comes to talent. Jimmy Butler goes out. Two things with the Warriors. Jimmy Butler goes out, and Brandon Brzezinski is not really healthy. He's got either like food poisoning or some kind of illness that Brandon Brzezinski was dealing with. Like, once you lose those two guys or lose one and the other is a diminished version and is out for a good chunk of the game, and it's just Steph Curry and that cast of characters that they got out there, that is an underwhelming team. That is an underwhelming team. And so the point being made here is it is key to keep Steph Curry at bay as reasonably as possible. And I understand that sounds ridiculous because we're talking about Steph Curry. And of course, Steph Curry is the greatest shooter of all time. How do you keep the greatest shooter of all time? You look at some of the shots that he made in game one and you think, okay, you can play as good a defense as you want on him, and it's still going to be an issue. But they guarded Steph Curry, were physical with him, made it difficult for him to even get the basketball. Like it was a masterful, I thought, masterful defensive performance against Steph Curry. And this time, it wasn't Amin Thompson being the Curry stopper, as it's been so coined. It was a team effort between Jalen Green, Fred VanVleet, Tari Eason's out there being active. Of course, Dylan Brooks when he's out there, and Amin Thompson when he's out there. It was much more of a committee to stop Steph Curry or to keep Steph Curry at bay, but a committee led by Jalen Green. Remember the two times, and rarely do you see this where arguably the best player on both teams, and I think Steph Curry is obviously the best player on the Warriors, but on a given night, Jalen Green can be the best player for the Rockets, and he certainly was, I thought, on Wednesday night, where you got the best player on both teams on the floor scrapping for the basketball, not once, but twice, ended in a jump ball because they're racing to the floor for the basketball. Like that is that. I mean, that's what you want to see, and certainly what you want to see from a Rocket standpoint. If you're looking at Jalen Green, so like not just the performance, and I think the offense was the big thing, but the defense and the overall effort and intensity that Jalen Green brought to this game is it's honestly what makes you is what makes you optimistic about the Rockets and Jalen Green himself, but it's also what can make you frustrated about them because you want to see that every night. And especially when you get to the playoffs, you want it to be more consistent. You want the variance to be a lot shorter than what it has been over time. So, and I've been saying, first off, I've been saying that Jalen Green is an underrated option as a defender for the Rockets. So I'm glad that manifested itself in this game. because I'm sure some people probably gave that the side eye when you think about who else is on this team. But Jalen Green can get after it definitely when he wants to. Um, but yeah, man, I just this is ceiling raising stuff, ceiling raising type of stuff, and it's not even like we're saying that Jalen Green's got to score 38 points a night or anything like that, right? It doesn't even have to necessarily even be 30. It can be closer to his average, or maybe it's a little bit more. Maybe it's closer to 25. But if it can look more like that, the decision making, the a little bit more consistency with the shot, obviously, the discernment again, the effort on defense, the overall impact on the game. I think he gets unfairly criticized for not impacting the game more than just as a scorer. And look, sometimes that does happen where he's not scoring, and really there's not just it's just a bad night, but he's got the overall, I think, ability to impact the game on both ends of the floor. So it was cool to see. I think a big part of the series. Another thing that I've been saying is that this is the chance for the stars to emerge as stars, for those questions to be answered differently, right? Like when I talk about this all the time, where you say a thing and it's true, but then new information comes in, and maybe what you said before is that was true before ain't true now, and maybe it was true that the Rockets didn't have stars going into this series, that the Rockets didn't have go-to guys, that the Rockets didn't have closers, guys that could put the team on their back. Let's just entertain it for a second and say it was true. The cool part about the playoffs is that by the end of it, and based off of what you do in the playoffs, you can completely change that narrative. You can completely change the way that is discussed. The way you play over the course of, let's say you play 8 to 10 playoff games, 8 to 12 playoff games before you're knocked out, or whatever it is. The way you play over the course of those games completely outweighs whatever the thought was about you over the 82 game stretch, because that's the part that everybody's watching. And that's the part that honestly matters the most. Playoff Jalen Green arrives right on time, because look, I don't think that they could have afforded to lose this game. I'm not that impressed by the Warriors, but I'm impressed by Steph Curry, and I respect Jimmy Butler. I don't know how long he's going to be out, but like overall as a team, I'm not impressed by them, but those guys still exist. So I'm not feeling good, obviously, going to Golden State down 0-2. They absolutely had to win that game. But I think more than anything, for the Rockets, they needed Jalen Green to rise to this moment, especially after he admitted after the game that game one got to him the way that it did. Well, that means that you got to make the adjustment, okay? The basketball adjustment that we talked about, and then the mental and emotional adjustment of getting your head in the game and out of your ass about this whole "it's my first playoff" thing. All right, you got that out of your system in the first game. It's time to show up, and he did that. He did that. Credit to him. Alperen Sengun, okay, I want to mention, just excellent on both ends of the floor. Went what was it, 17, 16, and 6. Okay, so 17 points. Six. Do I have that right? Did he really have 16 rebounds? I put that in my notes. Did Alperen Sengun really have 16 rebounds last night? I'm gonna double check this in real time as I'm doing the podcast, because something almost doesn't even feel right about it. Do I not have the proper box score up? Anyway, that's what I have, so I'm gonna go ahead and trust that. 17-6. What I do know is that he had, oh, of course I'm getting a phone call. What I do know is that what I do know is the dude was, for the most part, dominant on both ends of the floor. I thought maybe not dominant per se, because this game was more so about Jalen Green and his greatness. But if you really watch, Alperen Şengün and Steven Adams are thoroughly outplaying the Golden State Warriors bigs. Last night it was Şengün with his rebounding and his passing. I thought it was Adams with his screen setting, which is really some of the best in all of the NBA and has been for a while. And really just overall being the strongest and most physically imposing, I think, player in this series. I think if you had a Royal Rumble, unless the strategy was for everybody to take out Steven Adams first, which maybe it would be, but he would be the one I would trust the most to come out of a Royal Rumble of everybody in this series, right? Maybe even everybody in the league. Steven Adams, he'd be right there at the top. So between him and Alperen Şengün, and I think the physicality that they have brought to this series, like it has really shown you, I think, an advantage that is clearly in the Rockets' favor. Not just them, I think, defensively, in general terms, but the will that they're able to impose on you on the defensive side of the floor, on the defensive end of the floor, but also on offense with the offensive rebounds and just being tough covers. I have it up here now. Is this really correct? Dude had 17 and 16 last night. This was what I was going to point out. Alperen Şengün had 17 points, 16 rebounds, 6 assists. 6 of those were offensive rebounds. Okay, when I talk about them imposing their will and them being the more physical basketball team against to their credit, a fairly physical basketball team in the Warriors. I know people may not think of them in that way, but they are a physical team. I mean, they got Draymond on the team. But the 6 offensive rebounds for Alperen Şengün was more than any Warriors player had rebounds defensively. No Warriors player had as many rebounds, period, as Alperen Şengün had offensive rebounds. That's how dominant he was. Think about that. Like, and really, I'm speaking more to just the overall front court dominance of this team. No player for the Warriors had more than 5 rebounds total. Alperen Şengün had 6 offensive rebounds, 16 total. So that's pretty. And of course, the Rockets did out rebound the Warriors 36-26. They were in front during this game for the most part for all of this game. So that should not surprise anybody. But that is one characteristic aside from the obvious topic of Jalen Green playing like a top line player, playing like a superstar, was, I think, in a game or in a series, I should say, that is going to be largely characterized by its physicality and grit and how tough the players are. That so far it does look like the Rockets are the more physical of the two, and the tougher of the two. And that's not even like a discredit to the Warriors. It's really just a credit to the dudes that the Rockets have on that squad and the way that Alperen Şengün's playing, the Steven Adams presence. And you know what? I did not mention this going into the playoffs, and I meant to when I was talking about all of the credit that the Rockets deserve in just being proving everybody wrong in the time when they were a laughingstock in the league. The Steven Adams trade, what a move. What a move. I think in the moment, I couldn't really see the vision because they weren't a playoff team when they traded for him last year, and he wasn't going to be able to play for them in that year. So I didn't have the foresight to know what they would look like the following year when he would be available to them, that they'd be better in the way that they are, and that he would be just fine, like not hampered by really injury. They manage him pretty well, and he's out there. He's out there and he's providing a presence. And I think it like some of it, or maybe a lot of it, is rubbing off on Şengün. Like this team overall, man, it's just a really a grimy ass team. And maybe that's why some people don't necessarily like this series, don't necessarily get down with this series. But I respect the hell out of it. Speaking of which, Tari Eason. He gave him some critical minutes. He also had a critical moment, and I don't want that to overshadow his actual performance that I thought was really good, and I thought he was really important to the team, on both ends of the floor, honestly. But Tari Eason with the towel throw was silly and hilarious. It's like, bro, what are we doing? We're throwing towels now. Like y'all, y'all can't throw hands, so you're throwing towels now. But what I respect about it is, man, like he's got no back down or fear in him of any. Like I don't know if this guy is afraid of anything. Like he would. I feel like didn't play as well in that game one, but I don't feel like it had nothing to do with being nervous or the moment. Like he doesn't strike me as that. But played really well in this game, had 14 points, but I thought on both ends of the floor, he was critical because of that foul trouble that I mentioned earlier as well. Like when you're losing a man and you're losing Dylan, and these are your best or maybe your most prominent perimeter defensive options to go at Steph Curry, dog, what a luxury it is to still just have Tari Eason right there. To still just have Tari Eason right there, on top of the fact that Jalen Green is willing to give you effort on that end of the floor as well. That Fred VanVleet is a savvy veteran who plays pretty tough defense, or at the very least does a good job of like ball denial and is strong and and leans on just over there leaning on Curry and trying to make it tough on them. Like they still minus their top two defensive guys. And Eason, I don't know if maybe some of you guys who also watch the games might think that Eason is starting to make a case for right there with their one of their top defenders, like right there after Amin Thompson. But I'd still go with Dylan Brooks. But when you lose those guys and you still got Tari Eason, Jalen Green, and Fred VanVleet as viable options to throw at Stephen Curry. Oh, and by the way, there's no Jimmy Butler out there. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I don't know. We could go ahead and I didn't have this down to talk about, but I brought up Jimmy Butler a couple of times, and I brought up, I guess, Amin Thompson a couple of times. I didn't necessarily really want to make this a topic, but I guess I should address it since I'm talking about the game. And Jimmy Butler is injured, and I'm still, I guess, waiting on news about that. I probably should be checking that out while I'm recording. That's definitely going to be out there by the time this hits, so we'll know Jimmy Butler's status by the time this hits. But I do want to say about the play itself that I didn't I didn't even entertain for a second when I saw it that could have been a dirty play. I ain't saying that Amin Thompson ain't never had a dirty play, or that he ain't never had a moment where his emotions got the best of him, or that he's not capable of said dirty play or anything like that. I just looked at that play and I saw Amin Thompson and Draymond Green sort of jockeying for position. And there's a slight shove by Draymond Green that I don't think is an egregious shove. I think that they're just playing basketball and they're just jockeying for position. And then it looked like to me their feet kind of got caught up, and like Amin Thompson kind of tripped forward, like he was slightly pushed, but more so tripped and fell forward as Jimmy Butler was going in the air. And it was just one of the more awkward. It was an awkward play and obviously an unfortunate play since Jimmy Butler is hurt. But it was really just more awkwardness than I think any kind of malicious intent or dirtiness on anybody involved in the play. Like, I didn't think Draymond was dirty for the little push. I think they're just jockeying for position. It's a physical game. It's physical teams. And then Amin Thompson, he slightly pushed, but then it looked like I thought he tripped on either Draymond's feet or like feet got tangled down there, and then he fell into Jimmy Butler. Like it surprises me. It never ceases to surprise me or amaze me when like a non-issue becomes an issue, and I just don't understand it. I don't understand. Like I was gonna dismiss this, but then I saw, like I just, I'm following the commentary behind the game and what people are saying about the game, and part of my job, people don't know this, but part of my job over at Sports Radio 610 and Odyssey is to kind of monitor what's going on with Odyssey San Francisco station, 95.7 The Game. So I'm locked into what they're talking about. Even if the Warriors and the Rockets weren't playing, I'd be pretty locked into them. So the fact that they are playing works out pretty good. And I'm listening to them talk about this and take calls on this. And to their credit, to those hosts' credit, they seem to be like on planet Earth about this. Even if there is homerism with how they talk about the team, they weren't irrational about this, thinking that Amin Thompson undercut Jimmy Butler on purpose. But there was a bunch of callers that damn sure did, and it was a bunch of what I'm assuming might be real people on the internet, but could be bots. But a lot of it was, it came from somewhere where there's this energy of Amin Thompson had a dirty play on Jimmy Butler and took him out. And I don't even see how you get there. It is one of the weirder pieces of commentary on this series that I've seen. Maybe the weirdest piece of commentary on this series that I've seen. That Amin Thompson had a dirty play that resulted in Jimmy Butler's injury. I don't think that was intentional at all or malicious at all. No, and normally when you go after a guy like Amin Thompson, strike me as the type of guy, if he want to hit you, he gonna be standing up. Like he's not gonna just kind of fall and kind of play like he hit you. Like he had the almost chin check 61. He almost chin checked 61 out there. When they were going up and down the court, they had a moment. So that was another thing. Pat Spencer, that's right. Pat Spencer got the technical foul, and he was an issue. Not to go on a tangent, but you know that the Warriors are down bad when they got to put in a dude that's number 61. They used to play lacrosse, and he out there cooking like he's a viable option. But anyway, yeah, Amin Thompson checked Pat Spencer like dead ass in front of the ref, elbow to the chest. Like here you go. Like I don't feel like he's shy about if he wants to take a shot, he gonna take it. That clearly appeared to be an accident. So side note about that, but um, definitely want to give credit to the Rockets for at least making this series worth watching because if they lost that game, it wouldn't have been worth watching. It would have been pretty rough, because you're expecting the sweep and you're certainly not expecting the Rockets to come back. Now, basically, the series is starting over, but from Golden State. And I don't know, man. Like you look at this, I would say like the Jimmy Butler injury is significant, not just because of how good Jimmy Butler is, but because of the drop off after Jimmy Butler when it comes to this team. Like they've been so good with him, and a lot of the conversation about them has been about how good they've been since Jimmy Butler got there. But because of that, there hasn't been much need for a conversation about how badly they needed him and what they look like without him. I don't know if that's something that we've entertained as much because he has played and because he is a guy that will play through some pain. So, but now, it looks like it's a little different, and we saw what that looks like. You got a lot of Pat Spencer out there. You got Jonathan Kuminga. You dusting off Jonathan Kuminga after he haven't played in almost a month, and he's supposed to go out there and cook for you. Like, and Jonathan Kuminga's been good against the Rockets in the past, but this all of a sudden has flipped really in two ways, right? Like on the Rockets end, it's like, okay, well, Jalen Green has now shown up for the series. He has now arrived for the series. What's going to be the ebb and flow of his performance throughout the rest of it? Are we going to get something closer to game two or something closer to game one? I'm going to go ahead and bet slightly, I'll say a little reluctantly, but I'm going to go ahead and bet that maybe you don't get 38 a night, but you'll get closer to the 25, 28 range than you will, let's say, the 3 of 15 that he was, the 7 points that he scored in game one, right? Kind of also shaking that demon of, hey, I haven't been good against the Warriors. The Warriors have me figured out. Well, maybe not so much anymore. Okay, maybe now you figured out whatever it is that they figured out. So that's the one side. The Jalen Green development here is significant. And then on the other side for the Warriors is the potential loss of Jimmy Butler and even if he were to come back, a potentially diminished version of Jimmy Butler, and their lack of depth behind them, what do they really have to rely on besides the greatness of Steph Curry and the promise of Jonathan Kuminga? You know, and Brandon Podziemski, who I mentioned earlier, was ill in this game, and so he didn't show up, but or wasn't really a factor in the game. But is that going to be enough? I don't feel like a big three of Steph Curry, Brandon Podziemski, and Jonathan Kuminga, or Steph Curry, Brandon Podziemski, and Buddy Hield, or like any combination of them dudes. I don't feel like that's going to be good enough if Jalen Green is going to play anything close to like what he played on Wednesday night, and certainly not if Alperen Sengun is going to, and Alperen Sengun and Steven Adams both are going to continue to dominate up front in the paint the way they have. Now, last thing I'll get to before we get out of here, and I hate that this this episode, I don't really feel like we got to get the deepest of dives because it is draft day. I'm recording on draft day, and we're gonna have to shift gears really quickly, and we'll have some draft content for you throughout the coming days here as the Texans either pick or trade, or they're definitely going to make picks. But do they pick at 25? Do they trade up? Do they trade back? What do they do? They're always doing something frisky. So we'll react to the draft a little bit later on in the week, but I want to talk about Fred Van Vliet's leadership real quick, because as much as I can acknowledge Jalen Green made the adjustment, I feel like Fred made the adjustment too. And a lot of us were down on Fred after game one, I think rightfully so, because I mean, there's just not really a scenario where he should shoot more shots than Jalen Green or Alperen Sengun, which is what happened in game one. Got him 19 shots. Okay. 19 shots. I just, not that he can never shoot 19 shots. I prefer he don't, but he can't shoot 19 shots and it's more shots than them other guys. Okay. But notice how Fred didn't just take a back seat shooting the ball in this game. I thought what was really cool about it was that he even conceded his playmaking duties to Jalen early on in the game. And that was, again, when we talk about Jalen, I think that helped him get into a rhythm and into the flow of the game, finding a man in the dunker spot early on in the game, and really just working through traffic early on. Think about it, Jalen Green had 6 assists in this game, and 4 of them came in the first quarter. Just them setting the tone with him as a playmaker before he really just went off as a scorer like he did. I've been saying since Sunday that a better Jalen Green gets you less of all of that Fred Van Vliet shooting that you've seen, anywhere close to 19 shots. And just look at it. I think the numbers bear this out. Game one, the two of them combined for 34 shots. Now they only hit 7 of them, which is, I think, to me, that's outlier type of bad. They only hit 7 of their 34 shots, but they took 34 shots, and Fred took 19 of them. Jalen took 15. Okay, so out of 34 shots, Fred took 19 of the 34. Jalen took 15 of the 34 in game one. In game two, they combined for 33 shots. So basically the same. One less shot between the two of them, but basically the same. 34 shots in game one, 33 shots in game two. Jalen took 25 of these, and Fred took just 8. Now, the variance could be a little bit, it could be like 11 for Fred and maybe 22 for Jay. Like, it doesn't have to be 25 to 28, but that's what the balance, if the scale is going to be tipped one way or the other, it needs to be tipped in that direction. And it always needs to be at least leaning toward that direction. Like, if it's going to be drastic one way or the other, it needs to be drastic in terms of Jalen taking the 25 and Fred just taking the 8. But like, to me, this is the formula. I think this is a drastic overcorrection, but a necessary one. one that you needed to see. Again, it doesn't always have to be 25-8, but it should lean that way. And especially if Jalen, I think if Jalen Green is doing what he's supposed to be doing, I do think that the team is constructed that way. Now, I don't know what to I don't know what to do for the Golden State Warriors. They still have Steph Curry, which I would feel good about that. But is this too much to ask on a 37-year-old superstar? On a dude that's got as many miles on him as Steph Curry has, on a dude that's taking as many shots as Stephen Curry has, somebody that's played as much as he has, and to just not have that much around you after Jimmy Butler, who, by the way, gives you a lot on both ends of the floor. Like, one of the better two-way players that you'll find in the league for a while now. Take that guy out. I don't know. To me, it'd be a miracle for the Warriors to win this series without Jimmy Butler. With Jimmy Butler, this is a really good series and a competitive series. Without Jimmy Butler, I don't know how they get out of this series. It would be a miracle if they did, and certainly they wouldn't have a chance past this. So, big developments, I would say big developments in Game 2. Jalen Green, superstar status. Jimmy Butler and Golden State Warriors all of a sudden. Area. We're going to cover all of it right here on the B Block Podcast. Make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure you rate, review. Check us out on YouTube. Make sure you check out Foolish Club Media. We'll have some draft content later on in the week. Might do a little bit of a bonus episode. Probably need to get on here before next Tuesday. That's the schedule. We're doing Tuesdays and Thursdays here on the B Block. But with the draft being today, I will probably pop on Friday or Saturday since I'll be in the thick of it. So go ahead and check out for that at the B Block Podcast, Foolish Club Media, all of that. And until next time, y'all be good.
Beast got from Hiram Club. 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 Do the Hiram Club. Do the Hiram Club. Do it.